Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. Let's begin. The envelope trembled in her hand before she even opened it. She looked confused, almost bored, honestly, like it was just another piece of junk mail she didn't ask for. She never expected roses. Not from me. Not this year. She definitely didn't expect the letter. But I did. I expected every second of it. She came home wearing the same perfume I smelled on our neighbor's shirt last week. She always thought I was too soft to notice, too forgiving to fight, too pathetic to leave. And maybe I was, but I wasn't too broken to write. The letter wasn't long. Just one page. Handwritten. Nothing dramatic. Just a list. One sentence per betrayal. One thorn for every petal. You told me the trip to Phoenix was for a seminar. He posted your hotel balcony on his Instagram. You laughed when I called to say I missed you. I heard his voice in the background. You said you were at yoga. Your mat's been in the closet for 2 months. You said you didn't want cake this year, but you did want him. No signature. No threats. Just facts. The kind that slice through excuses like broken glass. I left the letter under her dinner plate. It was supposed to be a surprise. Candlelight. Music. The wine she once loved. But it all sat untouched. Like me. I watched it all from my parked car down the street. Her silhouette in the window. The roses in her hand. She didn't cry. Not at first. She just stood there. Still. Like time stopped. Then she flipped the page. And everything collapsed. Her knees buckled. She gripped the table. I thought she'd scream. She didn't. She just whispered one word I couldn't hear. Over and over. I used to imagine this moment would feel like justice. But it didn't. Felt like dust. Because the truth is, when someone shatters you slowly, piece by piece, the sound of them finally breaking isn't loud. It's quiet. And that silence, it stays. She stood there in our dining room, staring at the roses like they were some foreign object she didn't know how to hold. They used to mean something. Every year, she'd sniff them like a little girl, smile with those soft eyes, and say, "You always remember." But this time she didn't smile. She didn't even touch them, just stared. Because beneath the roses, she saw the folded letter. And she knew, somehow before even reading it, that I knew. From my car, I watched her sit down slowly, like she didn't want the moment to happen. Like she already understood that everything ahead of her would change what came behind. The window was fogged just slightly from the cool autumn air, but I could still make out her fingers trembling as they opened the page. She didn't read it like a letter. She read it like a diagnosis. Something terminal. Unavoidable. It started with a furrow of her brow. Then the jaw clenched. Then her lips parted just slightly, as if she was about to say something but had no one to say it to. And then her hand shot to her mouth. Her shoulders curled forward. Her head dropped. It was the first time I'd seen her look small in years. I could have walked in, said it to her face, screamed, accused. I could have thrown every lie back in her face like she threw away every promise she ever made. But I didn't want her to hear my voice. I wanted her to hear her own, echoing in her mind. All the lies she fed me. All the nights she whispered, "I'm just tired," while her phone buzzed face down beside her. You know what's funny? She used to complain that I was too emotional. "You take things too personally, Lowell." I'd say, "We're married, Meryl. How else am I supposed to take them?" But I learned how to stop reacting. I became a mirror. I reflected what she gave. And when I gave her that letter, what I really handed her was a reflection of herself. She pushed away from the table hard, her chair screeching back. She paced the room, picked up her phone, then threw it. I actually flinched from the sound of it hitting the wall even though I was across the street. Then she dropped to her knees and began to gather up the rose petals that had fallen. Like if she just put them back in place, maybe the rest of her life would follow. But it wouldn't. That was just the beginning. I sat in that diner for nearly an hour after she read the letter, pretending to sip cold coffee I never even ordered. My hands were sweating, but my chest was hollow. From across the street, I kept glancing at our front window like a coward, half hoping she'd come running out, half hoping she wouldn't. The truth is, I didn't know what I wanted. Closure? Revenge? Maybe just proof that she could still feel something. But what I saw was better than any apology. After the phone hit the wall, she disappeared for a few minutes. The living room lights flickered on and off. I imagined her digging through drawers, probably checking her phone bill, trying to guess how much I knew. The answer was everything. More than she could ever fix. More than she could handle. And she was about to learn that I didn't just leave a letter. I left her a version of myself she never expected. One that finally said, enough. Then I saw her stumble out the front door in her robe and bare feet, scanning the street like a woman looking for a ghost. She held the letter in one hand, crumpled now, like that would somehow undo what it said. I ducked down behind the dashboard, heart racing like I was the one who cheated. When she didn't see me, she just stood in the driveway, frozen. I don't think she knew what to do. She looked so lost. She didn't call anyone. Not yet. I think part of her was still pretending this was salvageable. That I'd come back in an hour like I always did. That I'd knock on the door and say, okay, can we talk now? That I'd apologize for making her feel guilty. But that version of me was gone. And what she didn't know yet was that the letter wasn't the only thing I'd left behind. Inside her purse, tucked between a half-used pack of gum and the keys to his condo, I'd slid in a photo. Just one. A printout from a hidden camera I'd placed in our guest room vent weeks earlier. It was grainy, a little distorted, but unmistakable. Him, in our bed, wearing my shirt. I had never hated a fabric more. And when she finds it, which she will, it won't just break her. It will gut her. Because that bed wasn't just a bed. It was the last place I ever thought she'd lie to me with someone else's body. She didn't just cheat. She rewrote our home without me in it. That photo had been burning a hole in my pocket for weeks. I kept it folded behind my driver's license, tucked away like some cursed artifact. I looked at it too many times, trying to convince myself it wasn't real, that maybe it was just a shadow or an old friend or anything but what it was. Proof. Proof that Meryl had brought him into our home, into our bedroom, into me. I know that doesn't make logical sense, but when someone breaks your trust that completely, it's like they don't just touch your things. They touch your soul and leave their fingerprints on places they never had the right to see. I didn't put the photo in her purse for revenge. I needed her to sit with it, to feel, for 1 second, what I'd been feeling for months. I wanted her to stare at it and realize, you did this. You let this happen. And then you pretended I was crazy for noticing. Back at the diner, my phone vibrated for the first time since I left the letter. One text. From her. No words. Just a photo. A picture of the roses, shredded. Torn apart like they personally offended her. The note wasn't even visible in the image. Just a corner of it under a shattered plate. She wanted me to know she was angry, that she wasn't going to cry. But anger is a weak disguise when panic is chewing at your spine. I didn't reply. Instead, I called my sister. The one person who told me to trust my instincts when everyone else said, "You're just being insecure." She answered on the first ring and just said, "Are you ready?" I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Yeah," I whispered. "Let's finish this." 10 minutes later, she pulled up beside the diner in her old Jeep. I slid into the passenger seat without looking back. I left the coffee unpaid and unfinished, just like our marriage. Meryl had no idea, but while she was running around the house, trying to delete messages and wipe away the evidence, I was already moving out. My sister had helped me rent a small furnished studio downtown. No lease in my name, no address she could trace. I'd even switched my primary email and bank accounts the week prior. While Meryl was cheating, I was preparing. That night, I turned off my phone completely. No alerts, no buzzing, no begging. I sat on a mattress that wasn't mine, in a room that didn't smell like her perfume, and for the first time in years, I breathed without bracing for heartbreak. But I knew this wasn't the end, because Meryl wasn't going to let go without a storm. And the storm was coming. The next morning, I turned my phone back on briefly. I knew she'd spiral once the silence stretched longer than her guilt could tolerate. 27 missed calls, 11 voicemails, 14 texts, ranging from, "We need to talk," to "You're seriously overreacting." And then the one that made my stomach turn, "Why are you doing this to us?" As if us hadn't died the moment she welcomed someone else into the life we built together. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the Notes app and typed one sentence. "She's still playing the victim." That sentence anchored me. It reminded me why I was gone, why I had to keep going. She wasn't just trying to fix things. She was trying to rewrite the story. Pretend I left because I was emotionally unstable, too sensitive, too clingy. I could already picture her rehearsing the version of events she'd feed her friends. Lowell just snapped. "I tried everything. I think he's having a breakdown." She would never admit she'd broken something fragile and called it strength. But I'd planned for this too. 2 days before I left, I'd placed a second letter inside a locked drawer in my home office, one she rarely touched. It wasn't a love letter. It was a log, a dated timeline of every red flag I'd ignored, every piece of evidence I'd gathered, every moment I almost confronted her but didn't. I'd even included a flash drive, full of screenshots, recordings, and photos, organized by folder. One named the lies, one named the proof, and one simply titled Enough. I knew she'd find it, and she did. Later that evening, she called again. Just once. No message. No follow-up text. Just silence. That was the loudest she'd ever been. I imagined her sitting there, staring at the screen, realizing there was no coming back from this. That the man she used to manipulate with soft apologies and fake tears had finally slipped out from under her grip and slammed the door behind him with facts, not feelings. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt grief, because the person I once loved still had my name in her mouth, but I was no longer in her heart. And this time, I wasn't going to beg her to remember. 3 days after I vanished, she found me. I don't know how. Maybe she guessed. Maybe my sister slipped. Maybe she dug through old emails or called every property manager in the city. But I heard the knock around 7:30 p.m. 2 soft taps, then one harder, more frantic. I froze. Part of me still hoped it was food delivery. That maybe this whole thing was just a surreal fever dream and she was still home, cooking dinner, humming off-key in the kitchen. But when I looked through the peephole, there she was. Meryl. No makeup. Hoodie. Wet hair like she'd walked through a storm just to get here. She looked tired. Angry tired, not sorry tired. Her hand hovered over the door for a second, as if she wasn't sure she should knock again. I didn't open it. Not yet. I needed to see her from the outside first. To watch her wait. I needed her to know this time the silence wasn't weakness. It was a decision. Then she spoke. "Lowell, please, can we talk?" Her voice cracked, and I hated that I still recognized it like a song I didn't want to remember. I cracked the door open just slightly. Enough to see her, but not enough to let her all the way in. That used to be the metaphor for our marriage, didn't it? She started with denial. "This is insane. We can't just throw 12 years away over a mistake." A mistake. That's what she called him. A man in our bed. A dozen deleted photos. A year of lies. A mistake. I didn't even speak. I just tilted my head and waited. That's when she switched to pity. "I know you're hurting, but you can't run from this forever." And finally, when I still didn't answer, she tried control. "You think leaving letters and hiding makes you strong? This isn't strength, Lowell. This is emotional blackmail." I laughed. I didn't plan to, but it slipped out raw and sharp, because she still thought this was about control. About her. She didn't understand yet that the man she betrayed wasn't the same man now staring at her from the other side of a chained door. I handed her an envelope. No words. Inside it, divorce papers. Her face went pale. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just stared at me like I'd spoken a language she never learned. Because for once, I was ending the conversation. And this time, there would be no letter left behind. She didn't move. Not right away. Just stood there on the other side of the chain lock, gripping the envelope like it might bite her. Her fingers fidgeted against the flap, hesitant, like some part of her still believed this was a bluff. Meryl had always been good at rewriting the narrative. making herself the misunderstood one, the victim of circumstance, the woman who didn't mean to hurt anybody. But as she looked down at the legal seal on that packet, I watched something shatter in her eyes. It was the moment she realized there was no spin left. No version of the story that ended with me crawling back. She tried to speak. I saw her lips twitch, breath catch, but nothing came out. Just air. That silence should have satisfied me, but it didn't. It just made everything heavier. After all these years, after all the nights I stayed awake beside a woman I didn't recognize anymore, this was how it ended? Not with screams, not with slammed doors, just a hallway, a quiet envelope, and two people who used to dream of growing old together, reduced to signatures on a line. When I finally closed the door, it didn't feel triumphant. It felt like burying someone who was still alive. I leaned against it for a second, listening. I thought maybe she'd knock again, demand answers, cry. But instead, I heard the slow sound of footsteps fading down the hall. No dramatic exit, no parting shot, just distance. That night I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed in the studio apartment, staring at the box I'd packed with memories. Wedding photos, anniversary cards, a seashell from our first beach trip. All of it suddenly meaningless. I used to believe love was something you fought for. But what no one tells you is that sometimes walking away is the fight. At 2:14 a.m., my phone buzzed once. It was a photo. From her. It was the bouquet of roses I'd left days ago. Only now they were in a trash bin, half-wilted, petals soaked in rain. And under it, barely visible, was a torn corner of my letter. No caption, no explanation, but the message was clear. She wanted me to know what she'd done to the last piece of me I left behind. Too bad she hadn't realized. I hadn't left anything behind. Not anymore. The strange how peace doesn't come with fireworks. No parade. No applause. Just quiet. Stillness. A kind of silence that doesn't hurt anymore. That morning, I woke up to the first real breath I'd taken in years. No weight on my chest. No pretending. Just me. And for the first time in forever, that was enough. I took a long walk through the park. No destination, just movement. I passed a couple holding hands, and instead of bitterness, I felt something different. Hope, because even though I'd been burned, I was still capable of believing, of trusting, maybe not in her, but in myself. Later that day, I sat down to write one last letter. Not for Meryl, not for revenge, just for closure. I didn't mail it. I didn't even sign it. I folded it and placed it under a tree in the park. The same tree we sat under during our third date, when she told me I made her feel safe. I guess that version of us belonged to the past now. And that's okay. Some things are meant to stay there. My sister called me that evening. She said something simple. "You sound like you again." I smiled. She was right. For so long, I twisted myself into someone small to keep Meryl comfortable. I stayed quiet to keep the peace. But silence isn't peace. It's just slow heartbreak. And now I was done breaking. Meryl never responded to the divorce papers. Not directly. But I heard she tried to explain things to her parents. Said I overreacted. I didn't bother correcting her. People can only meet you at the level of their own honesty. And I wasn't living in denial anymore. Now, I'm building something new. It's not flashy. It's not perfect. But it's mine. Every decision, every step, mine. I even started writing again, not just for pain, but for healing. Turns out, the pen I used to end our marriage became the one I used to rewrite my life. And you know what? I'm proud of the man I became after the fall. That's the end of my story. But maybe it's just the beginning of someone else's. Now it's your turn. Tell me in the comments, what moment in this story hit you hardest? Was it the letter? The silence? The photo? This has been Reddit Confessions. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your own truth. Because sometimes the quietest goodbye is the one that saves your life.